It is 6:40. I'd like to call to order the Operational Services Committee meeting. If I could have a roll call, please.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak?
Yes, here.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Present.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Here.
President Ewing?
Here. So we do have a quorum. Do apologize. I know we had it set for after our closed session meeting that we just had, a special meeting for the Board of Education, which ran over. So I do appreciate the community and those who may be waiting online. With that, I would like to move for approval of the meeting minutes of September 20th, 2022 Operational Services Committee meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Riddle.
Second.
Second by Ms. Leguizamo. Any comments, questions, or corrections to those minutes? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. Item 3B, approval of the meeting minutes for the October 18th, 2022 OSC meeting.
Mr. Riddle, so moved.
Motion by Mr. Riddle.
Second.
Second by Ms. Wozniak. Ms. Leguizamo. Any comments, questions, corrections to those minutes? All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. All right. We have one discussion item, which is the crossing guard salary increase.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
Good evening, Board President, Board members, Superintendent, community members, and colleagues. Mr. Moten is under the weather tonight, and so he asked me to step in for him. And so we have Miss Alicia Williams here to answer whatever questions you have regarding the crossing guard salary.
Good evening. Happy National Boards Day.
Hey.
School Board Day. I just saw
Thank you.
that. So, do you want me to go to presentation? I'm going to go through it.
Yes, please.
Okay.
And I guess I would say high level. So if there are just the, maybe the suggested increase and the rationale as to why.
Okay. In 2019, we came to the board for approval for the crossing guards to get an increase from $11 to $13.50, and when we did that, we were ahead of the game for 2025 $15 raise. That was in 2019. Now we are in competition with other school districts that are paying more, and so our salary is not comparable to what the other districts have. I've lost 2 crossing guards this week because of the pay. So and it's Tuesday, so I need to try to give them an increase in their salary.
Just if you want to go to the
Yes.
slide that has the proposed increase.
So salaries.
Perfect.
So right now it's $13.50 per shift. When we say per shift, it's per school. So we have a middle school, early elementary, and a late elementary. So every tier we have a crossing guard. They can either work 1 school or 2 schools or 3 schools. That would go from middle, early to late elementary. And so each shift they do in the morning is $13.50 for roughly an hour. Depends on 30 to 45 minutes, depends on the weather and the students.
Go ahead, Ms. Hannah. I mean, or I guess can you let her finish because it might be answered.
I'm just going through right now to see. And this year this year was new. We implemented training for the crossing guards. We had the chief come in and train our crossing guards. So we're trying to be more proactive and professional with our crossing guards to include them as employees of the district, and we want to keep them. Okay, I'm done now.
There's also a question.
Yeah, that's why. Can we get the actual proposed? There we go.
That's the comparison chart. So the proposal for
I see you, Ms. Hannah.
The next screen.
the next school year financial impact is the one I'm going to read. So for FY22, the total salary amount was $167,822.24. The proposed increase with a new $4 raise per hour would equal $217,547.40. And you see the fiscal impact of roughly under $50,000.
Okay. No, go ahead, Ms. Adler.
Okay, I'm just
And
wondering,
if you can use the microphone, ma'am.
with the neighboring district, particularly North Chicago, is a hop, skip, and a jump away, and therefore we can lose even at the current proposed
Correct.
increase. Okay, if they can go North Chicago and they get 22.
Right, so in North Chicago, although they're paying more, their hours offered is less. Our crossing guards can get up to 3 shifts at 6 hours, well, 6 45-minute shifts compared to North Chicago's only offering 2 hours.
Okay, so it kind of like just
Balances
breaks down
out.
like $44 a day, right?
It was not, for North Chicago, yes.
Yeah, $44 a day versus the what, 3 times 17? You said?
They're $13.50 now.
Yeah, that what is that? I never liked math. I did statistics. What is it?
54 for 2 shifts.
54. Okay, but anyway, so actually it's more than North Chicago,
Correct.
the neighboring district.
Yes, because there's more
Okay.
opportunity to work more shifts with our
Mhm.
district. Because even if they're only doing 4 shifts, we can rotate them and do other schools if some are out. Like this week, we have to shuffle them around to cover our different locations. So they may only get 4 shifts, but now they'll get 6 because I'm short.
Okay, and this is just a off the way out there question. How many crossing guards do we have that have longevity longer than 5 years, 10 years?
I have to get back to you on that. It's under 10, I do know that.
It's under 10.
A lot of them are retired from when they came over in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are retired since then.
Okay. Okay.
I had Mr. Shinkton, then I'll come back to Ms. Leguizamo.
Good evening, everyone. Before you guys came in, we actually, us girls were having a nice conversation here. So, what I'd like to say to the board, now, I understand that the crossing guards, they don't have union representation like our district employees do. But let's think also, we have paraprofessionals, which include safety, teachers' assistants, and even if you fall in the substitute teachers, the breakdown of what those bargaining units get is less than that amount per hour. So think of how your employees might react or feel valued knowing that, say, for instance, a paraprofessional starting right now probably would only be making, say, 14 because the bargaining unit hasn't caught up to the 2025, say, $15 an hour. But so, and these are the people that are working with our students. So I'm sure you would hear that if they might feel devalued, say. So there's always a alternate side to look at.
Mr. Shinkin, are you speaking about the crossing guards in comparison to the paraprofessionals?
Well,
Because
if you look, well, say, or if you break down the pay for, I was looking at this myself, and if you take the substitute pay for a day, that's $130. Now, say if that's based on an 8-hour shift, that's $17 an hour that a substitute is being paid. But a crossing guard will make $17.50.
but it will ultimately be less because it's only for, at the most, 2
Well,
hours?
Well, no, exactly. And
Rate?
yes, no, it's,
Yeah.
but the rate of pay,
Per hour.
what I'm talking per hour, is,
I get it. And if
Yeah.
it were up to me, we'd raise the substitute pay too.
no, I'm just saying that's, you know,
Mm-hmm. I get it.
You can't, you're talking apples and oranges, because there's no way I'm gonna get up, get dressed, at 30 degrees outside, stand out there for 45 minutes. I'm not gonna get up, get dressed, and go out in the dark, stand on a street corner for 45 minutes. I mean, when I stand on a street corner, I wanna make a lot more money. But the other thing is to be that cold for that long, and for a 45-minute, you've got to pay more when it's a short shift.
Right.
And I do apologize, but I know I had Ms. Leguizamo.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
It was your point is heard, Ms. Giller. Go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
And thank you for the presentation. I'm looking at the slide in regards to the comparison sheet. Just wondering, as you went out and looked at the comparisons of the other school district, do you know how far back is it that they have achieved these pay rates? Is it about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or is it just recent, about a few months ago?
I believe it's just recent, because when we called in 2019, the rates were different.
So,
So this school
essentially,
year, I've called this school year and got these new rates from them.
so you're seeing competition, which is driving up, which is
Yes.
also leading to us. In Ms. Williams, you all each year do an assessment and evaluation, and that was even one of the things that when you talk about the training that they looked at was
Yes.
traffic patterns and where there needed to be additional crossing guards.
guards.
And so with you losing crossing guards to neighboring districts, it makes it very, very hard for you to keep those paths to school safe.
That's correct.
And what I was making sure was that at the beginning of next school year that, you know, we were still going to be competitive. That's why I asked how fresh is this data,
Okay.
right? So that's where my train of thought was. Thank you, Board President.
Thank you. I saw a hand by Mr. Vukovic, and then I'm going to Mr. McBride.
That job is extremely hazardous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can think back years, decades ago, there was a crossing guard hit and killed
Yes.
while on duty in Waukegan.
Yes.
So no matter what you're paying,
Right.
on top of the weather, on days like this, I mean, it's a very important position that needs to be filled to, you know, because you're trying to get kids to walk to school
Right.
rather than buses. So, you know, that's going to be less there. But it is a stepping stone for you to be looking at for everything, whether it's substitute teachers, hiring teachers back and offering them $35 when you're offering tutors $45 without the education. So it's just something that, you know, you need to be looking at. I know that there was a proposal that was passed by the board to look at the administrative salaries, and that was months ago, and I'm still waiting to see when that's coming forward. But once that does, you need to be looking at all your other salaries too, because you look at your board docs, they come in and they go out. You need to keep them here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vukich. Mr. McBride?
Just for the sake of time, Ms. Keelan, I was one of those individuals you talking about today. I got soaking wet out there, but standing out there for an hour. Also, to your point, Mr. Vukovic, I got to be careful when I step out there because a lot of times they're on their cell phones, they're texting. The visibility was bad today because of the rain, and they can't see you. So therefore, I got those kids' lives in my hand every morning when I get up.
But not in Waukegan.
Well, the reason I'm not in Waukegan for what she's complaining about right now because Waukegan don't pay the salary that North Chicago pays.
And you can't as a board member. That's what Mr. Vukovic wanted. He can't.
But I'm just saying.
He is not a crossing guard in Waukegan.
That's
but yes,
why I'm in
thank
North
you.
Chicago. But I so choose to be in Waukegan first. But because of what you're talking about, conflict of interest, I went to North Chicago. But my point is that I'm trying to make a point as opposed to what you were saying and what Ms. Gillian was saying. It's a rough job. I do it because of the fact if I don't, I'll stay in the bed in the morning. But I do it because, number one, I like to be around the kids still, and I get myself up out of the bed. So I enjoy it. But to your point, I get it. Some of the individuals that you had in the Waukegan district and come over there with me now.
Yeah,
And I'm sorry, Miss Hannah. Miss Legos almost had her hand up. Go
Oh.
ahead. Final comment.
You know what?
Well,
forgot-
Miss Hannah, then we'll wrap up and move on. Go ahead, Miss Legos.
I forgot to ask, does the school district or does the crossing guards pay for the safety equipment?
We do. My office
And,
purchases them.
and that includes shoes?
No, so we provide a poncho, we provide a hat, we provide a vest, a stop sign, a whistle, a jacket, and shirts. We gave them shirts before too.
You can get a bigger stop sign. My stop sign is twice as big as the ones that we have.
And some have red lights flashing on them to help them see in the dark.
Okay,
You
thank you.
forgot what you go ahead.
and Ms. Williams, we had a tragic incident with one of our crossing guards, and the first thing came in my mind, they were out there working, dedicated person, always there, and that individual had no kind of medical insurance or anything, and all they're getting is that dollar amount that we're offering them. And so, I thought about that, and I mean, they couldn't even qualify for workman's compensation. So, you talk about the $17 an hour, they're missing a whole lot of stuff, and just getting that. And, number one, I'm grateful that we are, again, reviewing this, and again, we are raising their pay, because for so very long, they were, literally in the dust with what we were actually giving them. So thank you for even reviewing this and recommending an increase.
I did say final question, but did you have another question, Mr. Shington?
Well, I just wanted to respond. I was just bringing this up. I wasn't saying that what they do is not important or they're not entitled to that.
Yeah.
I was just looking at it from a different perspective. So that's all I was going to say.
And again, board, community, taxpayers, this is a concern. Wages are increasing. Competition and demand is increasing. And that means that when I say, yes, we want to look at spending, yes, we want to find out ways to save, but this is a competition, to Mr. Shinkton's point, that we're seeing across the board, across sectors, and something that the board is watching. Because while we talk about a $58,000 impact, when we make these changes, which are warranted and deserving of other bargaining units as well, those impacts aren't $59,000. And so as we talk about fiscal stewardship, that will be one of the conversations. It's I won't say it, Ms. Polk is very aware of my views on salaries, but you do have to look at what is competitive. And I will say here to any staff members that are watching is that the intent is not that you are devalued. We value what you do. We're seeing competition. We want our students to be able to travel to school safely, and that is prompting this decision, which I personally would support. But we do recognize and hear that there are a lot of people, and salaries is going to continue to be a conversation that is had as District 60. And I'm telling taxpayer and board members that also means money. And so while I have had my stance, and for the last, is it 3 or 4 years now, Ms. Polk, we've maintained flat. So I'm hoping to do the same thing, but we also have to make sure that we're not losing other talent like our peers, like our teachers, like those other positions. So it's a real conversation. There's a financial impact to the district with making these things, and I think we would say that they're warranted. But there is that outside perspective. For every action, there is a reaction, and I appreciate you for making us aware of that, Mr. Shington. And on behalf of the Board of Education, I do want to say that we value those other employees. They are a bargaining unit, and that is something that we are aware of and looking at. We have information items that we will go through. They've been presented here on the agenda. If any community members or board members have clarification, community members, just raise your hand. Board members, raise your hand. But we're going to go through these relatively quickly. We have.
I got one question on board.
I'm sorry, Ms. Hannah, you told me that you would have nothing to say, and this is the second item. So, but go ahead. Let's go through. Let me read what it is.
Okay.
So, approval to attend the National Child Nutrition Conference in San Diego, California. The individuals that are attending have been listed, and the cost is no more than $3,000 per individual. Ms. Hannah, you have a question.
Yeah, I just want to know, why aren't you going?
Because I don't want to fly. I don't want to go. I want to give them an opportunity to go. My assistant has never been to a conference, and the other person, Rita, she's a specialist who's out there in the school doing our audits. So I wanted them to get a full picture of child nutrition and get the experience and professional development that I've gotten in the past.
Thank you.
Okay.
Developing your people.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very selfless and shows a lot of leadership.
Great job.
Thank you.
5B, approval to purchase 2 48-passenger yellow school buses.
Question.
Go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
The question I have here is the school district looking into becoming or going into a green school bus alternative?
So I've started the conversation with a couple of vendors, and we're going to work together probably at the beginning of the school year to put that all together and see how that's going to look for the district. But it is on my radar.
Okay, and that's future thinking. And so specifically for these purchases, do these include all the bells and whistles, which is like Wi-Fi, AC, heater?
No. These are basic buses. I didn't include, these are the big yellow buses. So they include the radios, seat belts, not air conditioning, not Wi-Fi.
Ms.
Trying
Wozniak.
to keep costs at a minimum.
So bus one that we're going to get rid of is not worth anything,
Not according to the dealers.
and bus two, is it worth anything now?
No, it's not worth anything now. It's drivable, but it's on its last leg.
Okay.
And what are we
And we've
planning?
had them since 2000.
What are we planning on doing with bus one?
I'm
Lucy's got a
seeking
plan.
approval on what to do with bus one.
So we can turn it into an art exhibit.
I don't know.
There you go.
Sorry, go ahead.
That needs to
Just-
Go ahead, Mr. Riddle.
Just a quick question. Do we put security cameras in our buses?
So these new buses will have them
I didn't see them on the listed though on the
on the
invoice.
specs.
I didn't see it on the specs. It didn't
I
show
haven't gotten
security
that
cameras.
proposal yet, but we are going to have a front, a middle, and a back camera.
And those are on our other buses already?
No, that's why I'm doing it with the new buses.
With the new buses, you're going to put them in. Okay,
And they'll have
that's
the
important.
GPS as well.
Okay, thank you.
Molly's thing is to follow up on Ms. Leguizamo's is, I know, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure I'm not, that we are going out for our RFP this year for transportation services. So one of my questions would be, and I'm sure you guys have done it, but kind of compare, we still need the buses, but can we require that those buses be green in our RFP, RFQ? And one of the things and one of the reasons is, yes, we want a safer, healthier environment, but also I believe that in the next couple of years the state will move that way anyway. So if we are being proactive and we make that a requirement of our RFP, RFQ process, we may get a jump on that system since ours are outsourced, as opposed to a lot of districts would be having to upgrade their entire fleet. So it's just a question to think of as we're going out for the RFP, RFQ. And in comparison, now that we have this, the board may be willing to give you a little bit more to make sure that those buses, or these two buses that we purchased, would meet those requirements as well.
And there's current money out there right now for that. There's a lot of
Yes.
federal grant money that is supporting these initiatives as well, especially from a school district standpoint. So it's a great opportunity right now to have these discussions.
So I think you have the support for the two
thank you.
buses.
Okay.
And if you need to come back with a different proposal that would cost a little bit more to do that. We are now moving to C, which is approval of a 3-year lease for 2 driver's education vehicles. Classic Toyota has recommended that we do this and trade in the vehicles early so they can order the vehicles. I will tell you, there is a car shortage. We all know about it. Cars are more expensive. The financier and me do believe that a lease is actually one of the most or more effective or cost-effective ways for the district, at least right now.
How many driver ed vehicles do we have currently?
4.
And are they all being used?
Yes.
Okay.
And with that too, I know, and I guess that'll come up in student achievement, but that may be something that we have to bring back, Superintendent. We've heard from the community, I know Brother Blanks, that has concerns about making sure that students have driver's ed opportunities.
Education.
So,
Absolutely.
Question.
go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
So, I mean, once again, have we looked at an option of maybe going a green lease on this, like some hybrids, just kind of, and also, and I know this is something that I put up on the strategic plan for us to start taking a look at, but it's regards to going a little bit more, environmental friendly in our school district, right? So it's not even just the schools, but also putting in the electric car stations in our schools, in our parking lots. But, that's one thing that I was just thinking, right? Because the technology and our students are going to need to know how to drive these types of cars, right? That some of them are not push start, and some of them are, right? And so you got to understand that the various differences between one from another. Some of them have these bells and whistles about what's on the side, what's in the back, what's rear view camera. There's a lot of distraction actually when it comes to driving, when you think about it. So this is where I know it's a RAV4, it's a bigger car. I think this is our first time we're planning on leasing like an SUV type like car. We've always gone more compact, so I was kind of surprised to see that we're going bigger versus staying small, and just talking about the green option. So your take on that?
Our students are getting bigger. It was hard, like the driver's ed teachers were complaining or mentioning that it's tight for them and the students, and it's a safety concern with them being in a compact car. So he asked if I could look into other options. So these 2 that I'm bringing before you now are up for leases are ending. I still have 2 Toyota Camrys that will probably come up next school year, and I can be working on the green initiative then.
Okay.
Love it.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, I just want to ask the question. It's a little confusing to me that $549 a month for 36 months, but then it says the lease includes gap insurance coverage with 2 years, 10,000 miles.
3 years, should be 3.
Pardon?
Should be 3 years.
Should be 3.
Correct.
Okay, and we don't put on More than 10,000 miles in 3 years, very little
No.
mileage.
And we have
Okay.
very little maintenance too, so.
Right, very little maintenance on a car like that. Okay, that's fine, thanks. Great. And I think it's great that you're going to a little bit bigger SUV.
Thank you.
And those cars are not used at all by anybody in the department when they're not in use as driver's ed? They just
Well, I
sit
think
in-
drivers ed use them throughout the summer too, so they don't sit.
Oh,
I know they don't
Okay,
sit.
they're used all summer. Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you. 5D, approval of facility rental waiver request for Inter-Waukegan Soccer. Information has been provided to the public and the board.
This is great, and they don't charge at all for that. They don't charge the kids at all, which I think is terrific.
Awesome. All right, E, approval of replacement of exhaust fans in WHS Washington campus locker rooms. And F, approval of replacement of controllers on 5-unit ventilators at Washington campus.
I just have one question regarding that. How old are they? The ventilators, how old are they? And if they are they still under warranty? And if they are, have we looked into contacting the company?
Okay, let me, if I may read a statement that was provided to me by operations. When it comes to the aircon proposal for Washington campus, the exhaust fans in each locker room do not function at all, which means there is no air movement in these spaces. Working exhaust fans create steady airflow throughout the locker rooms. The more air movement, the quicker surfaces will dry, reducing standing water, mold, mildew, and odors that come from it. Plus, with COVID, air movement and health is a must. And so regarding the age, regarding the warranty and the like, I can inquire about that. But that's the reason why they're requesting to do these repairs.
Oh yeah, I look, I'm in total agreement
Yeah.
with the exhaust fans.
Yeah,
I wasn't referring to that.
okay.
We were talking about the ventilators.
Okay, so let me read the statement that he provided regarding that. In regards to Johnson Controls proposal, the areas specified being the 5 classrooms need necessary repairs made to the unit ventilators in each room. The items that need repair, control, operate, and help monitor the spaces for heat and air conditioning. Without these repairs, the units will not operate properly. The controls and other parts needing replacement are outdated also, and hard, if not almost impossible to find. There is also a line in the proposal to extend communication to these areas. This would mean being able to see and make necessary changes to those areas from a computer and to save time and money instead of having to go to each location and make changes by hand and have no monitoring. So again, in regards to the age and the warranty, I'll have to reach out to Mr. Moten and get back to you all.
Yeah, because is this would these controllers be in the newer parts of the building or the older parts of the building?
I have to get back to you.
It says rooms 344 and 348.
Don't mean nothing to me.
Yeah, I have
Well,
to.
I'm sure it's the third
Yeah, I
floor.
have to get back to you with
Yeah,
specifics.
please, because again, if they are well, Washington campus though, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Any other question related to this?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, we have the reports that have been presented. We have the treasurer's report, therefore, information. The student activity and convenience accounts report, there for information. I will say with that too, communication, I'm bringing it up here, but we keep getting requests, Pope, about clubs and organizations not knowing how to request funds or monies. So if superintendent, we can communicate that out. We have one from BSU. We have other initiatives that come forward, and there's always a disconnect between what we have for funds that we set aside for the clubs. And so if we can communicate to those club sponsors how they can ask for or make those requests. Thank you.
Question.
Go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
Sorry, comment. If I remember correctly, these student activity funds are funds that each club obtains themselves, or is this something that we also help to put money in the funds?
Okay, there's two different types. The clubs that are in the schools, that are after-school programs, the board fund those. But student activity funds are funds that are generated through fundraisers, and they're for a specific purpose. And then we also have convenience funds, which are normally used by the employees if they have vending machines and the like for things for the employees. So for the club, I believe that was referenced at the last board meeting, that would be a club that could be requested by a sponsor within the school. And typically there is an application that is submitted to the principal, and then we fund that club.
Okay, so for instance, right, if the board wants to help pay with for the transportation, or put money aside for transportation for like the senior class to do prom and or homecoming, it would have to stem from someone at the high school to do the application, send that into the principal, and then ask for that fund to be funded through the board, right?
Yes, unless there is a request that goes through the superintendent or directly to the Board of Education, and then the business office would be directed to divert monies for those purposes.
Similar to what happened to the JROTC Raiders that
Absolutely.
we just recently passed.
Yes.
And I do want to be clear about that, is the board has allocated funding inside schools for these programs already through the budget process. So communicating that out and making sure that those monies are expended. But we use the term, what does divert mean, Ms. Pope?
It would be transferred for those purposes, because as we know, the budget has been allocated for other purposes. Thank you for asking that. And so we would have to reduce something else and then transfer the money for those purposes.
So divert means when they come and you just start approving every request, that's money that's coming from somewhere else.
Yes.
So I always want to remind the board is there's not an unlimited pot of resources. And not saying that we don't want to do it, but when we're doing that, Ms. Polk is making the decision to move, cut, change, something else. So there
At the
has
direction of the superintendent of Board of Education, we're making those moves.
yes, and,
Yeah.
but I do want to say is there's already money allocated in school budgets
Yes.
for these types of things. So
Yes.
I would first refer them there and make sure we communicate that process out so everybody knows it and it's transparent. But then secondarily, right, that is an option that the board has.
Yes.
But Ms. Wozniak.
On the expenditures listing, there's two for Bazzini for candy bars for about $15,000. That's a lot of candy bars.
Oh my God.
What group is that for?
That was a PTO fundraiser.
For which school? Do you know school? Or is it a bunch of schools or just
It's
one?
a multitude of schools. I think it was like 3 or 4 schools involved in those fundraisers.
Okay. It seemed like a lot of candy bars at one spot.
Yeah, they did well. They did well.
Well, thank you. As always, we have item 6C, the schedule of investments. My only question with that is, as of right now, we see no concerns.
You want to answer? Those were questions that I gave to our advisor as well, because I saw that from the $10 million that we initially invested, we're down to 8 million something, right?
really?
So I kind of, I was like, hold up, Lori, what's going on here? But if you look to the far right, if we allow those monies to mature, we're going to get that and interest. So we have 11 million plus on the other side. So that means right now, If we needed the money, there's a possibility we would lose, right? But right now,
We don't need the
no.
money.
Board President, quick question on that, though.
Go ahead, Mr. Riddle.
Okay, Ms. Polk, I see that there are 7 of those funds at 250,000 each coming due this year. One starting in January 23, 223, 523. They are all mostly paying less than 1%. Some of them even 0.5%. Is it possible we could look for a better investment? I know some CDs are paying now as much as 5%. So like the one coming due in January, Consumers Co-op, for instance, is 11-month CD, 5%. Could we possibly consider moving that to make 5 times as much money as we're making on some of these currently this year, if we hit some of those big ones?
Yes, we could certainly talk to Lori about that, but and we've been in constant communication about those investments. But for the longest time, we were getting more on these type investments because the bonds and the savings accounts was less than 1%, right? And so we've at times sold these, when they matured, and then we reinvested.
Right.
And so we're looking at this in totality, but I could certainly talk to her about whether we want to do bonds at this time. But for the long haul, she's suggesting that we stand the course with these type investments.
Right, but 5 times, what we're getting or
Yeah.
better right now. I mean, see what she can do with that. But I just
Yeah.
think the market, some of these CDs, and they're guaranteed, they're FDA insured. Or
Yeah.
what do you call it? FDIC.
Right, yeah, we certainly can talk to her, and then we'll be able to talk to council, because for the board, we have to make sure that it's secure.
Yes, those are
Yeah.
FI, whatever they call it.
Collateralized.
Yeah, we have to make sure that we're collateralized. All of our accounts are
And
collateralized.
that's part
Yeah.
of it, and to be honest with you, Mr. Riddle, that's some of the drawbacks to putting it into a co-op or a credit union. So it's not a question or a conversation that we shouldn't have, but it requires changes to those FIs.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, certain things we can't do as a school district, and
Right.
so.
Right.
Ms. Gonzalez has a hand.
Yeah, I had a note about this as well, kind of along the lines of Mr. Riddle. But I also had brought it up way long ago. But it seems like there's an appetite to go green. So can we think about divesting from oil? Maybe think about, that Chevron piece going elsewhere. I think it could be like one, maybe not the whole 5 or whatever that we were looking at, but just that one, to start thinking, okay, where else can we look ahead for the
Okay.
future of,
Okay, we'll certainly talk to our representative.
Green investments.
Are we still working with Elizabeth?
Not on this.
Okay.
We work with Old National representative, Laurie Kazik. Yes, that's our investment advisor. Elizabeth Hennessy works with us for our bond council. Anytime we have bonds, we work with Elizabeth and Kyle Harding.
And you're confident in?
Oh, I trust her.
Oh,
Because,
not Elizabeth. I do.
Oh, I
too.
trust Elizabeth, yes.
So do I. But I'm talking about Kasich.
Laurie, yes, I trust her too. Because when we look at the document, I'm looking to the far right. And oftentimes I'm questioning her about our investments. And before we roll over our money into additional investments, I'm talking to her and making sure that it's sound.
And again, that's why I asked, are we comfortable? With elections and the craziness that is America right now, you have to kind of watch it,
Yeah.
but also understand that it's going to be some ebbs and flows. So again, there's a risk if we need to access it. We don't need to access it right now. So it's best to let those that we can sit, and then we will recoup an investment for the taxpayers and our students.
Right.
So I agree with the strategy. Again, I watch it.
Yes, we are watching it. Because
but I'm not, that's why I asked, because
Yeah.
when people look at it. But with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion
Second.
by Ms. Wozniak, second by Mr. Riddle. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned. If we can meet back here at 7:50. 7:30, as close to 7:30 as possible.
Oh, I thought we was getting right to it so we can get right out.
November 15th, 2022 Student Achievement Meeting. If I can have a roll call, please.
Mr. McBride, Mr. Riddle,
Present.
Ms. Hannah, Ms. Callahan Wozniak,
Here.
Ms. Leguizamo,
Present.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Here.
President Ewing.
Here.
I move we approve the October 18th minutes.
Motion by Ms. Wozniak,
Second.
second by Ms. Leguizamo. Any comments, questions, corrections to the minutes? All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. Discussion item for policy 5301.
All right. Good evening, Board President, Superintendent, board members, colleagues, and members of the community. I'm going to ask Ms. Jennifer Rice de la Sanchez and Mr. Daniel Hill to come up to present on proposed changes to graduation policy 5301.
Thank you, Dr. Cesario. Good evening, Board of Education, President Ewing, Superintendent Placencia, community, and colleagues. Just want to welcome back to our fourth conversation around policy 5301. And really within this conversation, it is a recap for all of us. And you do have a folder. Within the folder, it has all of our ISB guidelines for us to follow for our graduation requirements. And you're also going to see an article that will kind of talk through, you know, when we get to what rigor has meant to our policy group. And then lastly, we're going to talk through on a slide kind of the side by side of what our current policy has and what I think to be some, through great feedback, is kind of what is our current policy and what is expected of our students. And then we'll talk through on the right what is our recommended as far as that goes. I'm going to turn this over to Principal Hill.
Good evening, everyone. So on the slide here, just as we've been having these conversations and the different readings, some of the questions that have come forward that we're considering as we're driving these conversations and decisions. So as a recap, one being as a district, how do we advocate for all students' post-secondary aspirations? And then can we offer differentiated pathways for students to graduate? The second question that we've been pondering and working through with this policy conversation has to do with how do we provide that optional time in students' daily schedule for acceleration and interventions, and then the possibility of a structured study hall, with our goal being, as we mentioned before in previous conversations, being able to provide those opportunities within the school day, whereas now we're competing with either before school, after school, or during lunchtime. The third question driving this conversation, how do we begin to rethink our credit recovery efforts, shifting to more preventative efforts and catching students before the failure occurs, versus right now it's post-failure support or recovery. And then the final question has to do with, which is probably more of a bigger one in terms of our ability to be able to provide during the school day those mental health and counseling and social emotional supports that our students are needing. We'll talk in a later slide about some of the numbers that our students are presenting, but again, right now we have limited opportunities to be able to do that with our current structure because we're either forced to either pull a kid out of lunch or some other course that they're having to be in to provide some of those needs.
As a policy team, what we looked at is we came to consensus really about what rigor meant to us, right? And ultimately, what we came to consensus around is that it really is about creating an environment where students are learning at high levels and that they're demonstrating that they're learning at high levels. And ultimately, what we decided that we want more of, right, are those AP courses, IB courses, and our dual credit courses and our dual enrollment courses. But at the end of the day, rigor is really developed within our classes, right? Having that student agency, building on student strengths and providing opportunities, right, where their strength zones are, and really accelerating on relationships. The policy 5301 recap is really around when we went through our equity policy tool. and our review tool. And the conversations were around students being able to have time in their schedules for strategic interventions, right, and or acceleration opportunities. Being able to build out courses that would take us a while to build out for students to meet their needs, and using the data, right, and having that time and schedule where we can see exactly what needs to be targeted in math, right, and then how can we meet those needs as a tier 2. Students having time in their schedule for a structured study hall, as Principal Hill mentioned, right? We also discussed that students that are within our EL program, they have not exited within their access, they too take an ESL course every year. This course is considered an elective course. So every year that they have not exited access, this is an additional course that students in our English Learner program do take, and we've discussed that as well. If students are taking an online credit recovery course, we discuss that there are additional struggles that may not be scaffolded for our students that do struggle to read at grade level, especially in courses that are online. It just poses another barrier. Discussions that we had too around students that are transferring in from other countries, they need additional language supports, and there can be poses within, or barriers that do pose within their schedule of all the courses that they need to take. And again, just having conversations around more AP, IB, and dual credit opportunities. We've discussed this slide, the next slide, Lee, a few times. These are just really the policy recommendation recap. And we're going to discuss on the next slide really what this means within our current policy of 23 graduation credits versus the policy recommended of 17 graduation credits. And like really what does that mean side by side of what a student's day needs to look like, right? And what we discussed and had the dialogue around was leaning towards the state requirements for the opportunity for skill building courses, right? Having study hall, dual enrollment. We discussed freshman seminar being a mandatory class to take as a freshman, however, not a mandatory class to pass. Just to participate in, which we'll talk a little bit further about. We wanted to review all related policies in regard to graduation, as well as lastly our physical education being a mandatory class to take, to participate in, to earn GPA, however, not being a mandatory class to pass, creating a barrier in looking at our failure rates. What you'll see, and this is also in one of your folders, this is the side-by-side that I was speaking of, in really looking at what our current policy is and what this recommendation looks like. So next slide, Lee. Thank you. So when we look at the very left column, this is what ISB, right, recommends for all districts. And then in the middle column, we're going to look at what our current policy has. And our current policy has 23 credits to graduate. And really that's just put in a minimum of enrollment at 23 credits. Our students do take more credits than this and graduate and earn more credits than this. And then on the right, as we're going to talk through row by row, this is what 17 looks like, right? And this is minimally an enrollment of 22 credits. So even though on paper it says 17 to graduate, students are still taking, per participation, 22. And so line by line what this looks like, and remember that these are just courses per ISB. We have hundreds of courses. And our course offering guide is what we call our COG, hundreds of options for students, right? And so just knowing that this is just the simplest form to look at. Our current policy and what ISB recommends is we have 4 language arts courses, and currently we have 4. Of course, recommended we need 4. Below that, what ISB says is we need 2 courses that are writing intensive, and within writing intensive, These can be, of course, a separate course, should we want. However, it is embedded in our current courses that we have. And so currently, is it embedded? Check. Yes, it is. And then as a recommended policy, check. Yes, it would be embedded. ISB says 3 math courses. Currently, we have 3. Recommended we would have 3. As far as 1 computer literacy course, this too is embedded within what we teach here and these literacy standards. So this is really a check. Yes, currently we have it embedded, and proposed and recommended we have it embedded. As far as science, ISB recommends 2. We currently have 3. Recommended policy has 3. Our students do have to pass our Illinois Constitution, so that is a check currently, and in the proposed, yes, of course, check. Students also need to choose within fine arts, music, world language, CTE, speech and debate, a minimum of 1. Students take more than 1,
What
but a
is
minimum
world
of 1
language? Are you
within
talking
this.
about foreign language?
Yes.
Yes.
Why are you calling it world language?
Yeah.
Oh, they've changed it at the ISB level?
The distinguishes between that versus we have courses for bilingual students and such. So they're taking a course specifically to learn that language. And so if I'm taking Spanish, is to learn the Spanish language, versus if I'm taking a Spanish language arts that's taught in Spanish. It's not for the purpose of learning the language, but it's taught in
I know what it is.
That's the way it's
was wondering, have they just retermed it?
Well, it's
foreign
similar,
language?
Miss Hannah, to what you've even said around SRA to reading A to Z. It's kind of like a reterm of things. It's quite common that the more things change, the more they remain the same. And this would be one of those cases. Or yes, that was exactly what it was. And so the recommend policy for any of these, right, through student choice would be 1. General electives, again, these are up to 4. Students may, especially if they're in the EL program, they're earning 4. Although many students want to take more than just an ESL course, they're excited about taking courses that are of interest in them when it comes to general electives. So if a student were to take an explicit computer literacy course, right, then they would need 3. So it's really student driven, but really it meets the minimum. However many electives that they need, it meets the minimum graduation, and or it can meet more. So that's why it says up to 4 there. Really the most important thing to look at within this are the shifts right below here in the middle, the shifts of the recommendation. This is as simple as it gets within this policy. So for PE and for wellness, our current policy has 4, 1 each year, right, required to pass. What we have stated in past is that we would have 4 recommended to participate in. As far as freshman seminar, our current policy has freshman seminar required to pass at any grade level, transfers in, even as a senior. And so what a recommendation is that students participate in freshman seminar during their freshman year, right? And that meets the requirement of our policy. The third option, as far as the recommendation, is what ISB has as our recommended 2 social science courses. Our current policy has 3, and our recommended has 2. We also wanted to put below here on the very last row that it is our goal, and we know that coming down the pike within ISB, that we will need to have 2 required word language courses by school year 28. It is our goal to have these courses up and running and moving by 27, but a lot of planning goes into this for our teams, staffing, preparing the curriculum, the scope. So we just also wanted to share that with you.
If you want to write
wait.
it down, Ms. Hannah, are you guys done with the presentation?
Okay, one more slide.
One more
Okay.
slide.
So this final slide, you've seen this before, it just sort of summarizes the needs, challenges, and opportunity that these changes would afford us. We know that, with our current performance data, that we have a variety of needs, academic, social, emotional learning, and as well as credit recovery. Some of the challenges that we're currently experiencing with the policy is like that time during the school day to intervene adequately with the current policy, and what we're currently dealing with and facing with our students is that there's just not enough time within the school day to adequately intervene based on those three areas. We also are competing with before and after school interests, students' work, clubs, sports, the variety of things that our students are involved in to give that well-rounded education. To intervene with their needs, we need to be taking away some of those other opportunities. And there's also limitations in the applications of our current resources. As I mentioned before, like some of the investments that we made with some of our counseling supports, they're limited to only pulling those students during lunchtime because we're not going to pull them out of an academic course, which again creates another problem where students are having to choose to go to lunch, socialize, have that break within their day, or go receive some supports and services. With the 23 credit option, we're saying that this is not impossible to do. There's some options to address those needs, but with the shift in the proposal for the changes in graduation policy, it gives us more of those options. And those would be an answer, or one of the answers to some of the things that we're facing, is to allow us more options. We do some screening data, and we've had hundreds of students through that screening data that have demonstrated the need for some additional supports, and then we're faced with the challenge of when and how are we going to be able to provide that. And in some cases, based on their schedule, we just don't have the time within the day to do so, or it's very limited, especially if the student fails a course and has to retake it. That again, it complicates the issue and our ability to be able to address that. So that's our last slide, and we're going to open it up for questions and or comments.
Miss Hannah, then Miss Wozniak, then I see Miss Gillen, and then Mr. Shinta.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. But you know what? I hear a lot of people talking about new times, new kids, new ways of thinking, new ways to educate. And I was amazed. I think it was maybe either yesterday or the day before. I was watching the news, and there was the local school. I wish someone could help me. They were highlighting the vocational program that they had in their school, and I'm going to go all the way back to 1995 when our school had a very healthy vocational program right here in our school. Okay, and I'll go back even in my memory to where at the time when they were removing vocational from our school district, it's in the minutes that if we ever were able to put our vocational programs back in our school for our students, that we would look at it and reconsider. Anyway, the school that was being highlighted on the news was vocational pathways, and this was in one of the more affluent school districts, and they were talking about automotive, computers, and I was just writing because we had home economics for our ladies, well, and young men, but the computer coding, we didn't have that then, but we had the printing shop, we had the woodwork, and see all of the things that we had here that you all presented to us. It makes me wonder, going back to my beginning statement about the new way to educate kids, And I'm just wondering if we need to be, we talk about meeting children where they are, and we're kind of teeter-tottering back and forth on within the academic parts for our students, right? And so in all of the conversations that you all have been having and devising, what we're going to do with our students, have you all talked about enhancing anything vocational for our students? Many students may not gravitate to the academics, but they'll gravitate to something vocational. And everything you're trying to teach them in academics, they'll learn it in the vocational. So, I appreciate all the time and stuff that you all are putting into that, but I am asking about the vocational, because I have heard the superintendent speak about pathways for the students. And so are you all discussing that instead of just sticking with the credit-based academic stuff? I mean, I understand that there's core classes that students must take, but we've got to kind of get something that will grab our students' attention. And I understand we have the tech campus, but I don't even know, are we still at 150 that could go out to the tech campus when we're trying to educate 4,000 or 5,000 at that grade level? Okay, you understand, but we can only get 100 and some out there at the tech campus.
Yeah.
But
So-
there's many more that would probably benefit. So are you all looking at that?
Yeah,
I'm sorry that I went on.
I think the questions you're raising also, it speaks to the fact that how we need some adjustments in that policy, because yes, we are having those conversations in terms of, because really all departments right now are looking to enhance and expand their programming. Shameless plug, because I'm preparing to have this conversation more in depth in a couple of years, because some of the things it's going to require is, when you look at Washington campus, is we're going to need some new facilities. Yeah.
Well, we already had the space. We had the spaces for
2 years. We're gonna get deep into that. But yes, the conversation are having. Every department each year, they go through processes in terms of course offerings and different things that we can do. And one fact does remain, like right now, in terms of like some of the physical space, like we're like tapped out at Washington campus. But yes, we're having those conversations, but they're at the surface level. But right now, when you look at the policy of what we have to do, our ability to be able to engage in some of the things that we can do, some of those innovative strategies, in some ways the policy limits us to be able to do that, because we got to offer this course, we have to offer that course. And so by helping with this policy change at the board level, it gives us the freedom to be able to do all kinds of things, because we don't have all these additional mandates that the state don't require, if that helps. So yes, the simplest form of the question.
Okay, because I'd certainly like us to get and to do things that will excite our students.
This policy review is one step closer to that. So removing those barriers, then we're able to then again have those conversations. Because right now we could talk about it all day long, but if there's no place to put it, then we're just spinning our wheels. So this saying yes to this policy change is also saying yes to what you're asking.
And I see you, Ms. Wozniak. I just got to jump on that, and I want to make sure it's heard for the community. There are two issues that we have going on. Mr. Hill is bringing a current problem. There is a crisis and emergency with the students that are in our high school buildings. But we also have the flip side to that, is we need to better prepare our students for high school, right? It's because, again, for electives, other opportunities, is by the time our students become juniors and seniors, they should have time in their schedule that will allow them to
That's
explore
right.
with career exploration.
That's right.
Because, as we've heard of the failure rates and the things early on, even with our own graduation policy, is, well, if Mr. Hill has to put a student that failed freshman and junior year gym or PE, now as a junior, they got 3 classes of gym that they're taking. And so again, those are small tweaks, but I think, Ms. Hannah, I don't want to miss your point, is we have to create a triage plan right now for those students that left as sophomores or left the 7th graders and came back as freshmen, are now sophomores, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to make that clear too, is what people hear is that students aren't prepared for high school, and so we're putting all of these supports in. And the logical question is, which again, I'm not asking you to give that answer tonight, Superintendent, but the logical answer and question is, what are we doing so that this doesn't become Mr. Hill's problem to solve at the high school level, right? So he's solving a problem that he himself didn't create, and that's why I give a lot of credit, is because what they're saying is the current policy is very stringent. I have a clarifying question before I go to Ms. Wozniak. Was if you can go back to the PowerPoint and the second to last slide. Needs, changes, and opportunities, I believe, one over, Mr. White. So right now, yep, it says 23 minimum enrolled courses versus 22. I just want to make sure I understand what is being asked of the board. Are we saying that we want to lower the credits to 16, that we only want to enroll a minimum of 22, or that the credit requirements will be 22? I think we have to be explicit about what we're asking from the board.
Yeah, and it will be 17. It'll be 17 as far as to pass. And I want to be really clear too that it doesn't mean that they're only taking 17. They have to participate in 22. Because if you add 5 to 17, English teacher, but like at the end of the day, that's 22.
Yes.
Because they're still taking 4 years of PE, they're taking 1 year of freshman seminar. That equals the 5 that they're still taking and participating in and minimally enrolled, and they have to participate in this. So thank you for clarifying that and for allowing the opportunity to do that.
And it needs to be spelled out. So, because I'm looking here, right? I'm sitting here jumping for joy. And you just busted my bubble when you said, I'm looking at, they just taking it down 1 credit from 23 to 22.
Right. That's why
And
the side to
then-
side with those columns is really important to notice. Yeah.
Well, you, me, and everybody else in here knows. But looking at this, if this were to go out to the public, they're going to say, the credits are just dropping 1. So, but it's not true. Because
The credits
right now,
enrolled, right, yes.
it's going to be 17
To pass.
to
That's
graduate.
right, to graduate, and they still need
yeah.
22 to take.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to take that away from them because it's semantics, and like on paper it's this. However, in theory and practice, it's really this, and it doesn't lessen that the students have these courses to take and they still have to do well in them. It doesn't lessen that. So we just want to be clear on that.
Yeah, but the parents and the students need to understand 17 credits, which I totally disagree with, but it is what it is. 17 credits will be what will give you a diploma.
I'll go to Ms. Wozniak, and then I had a few hands, and then I have a comment myself. So, Ms. Wozniak.
So the check marks are not actual class credits. But you're required to take them. So aren't those, in essence, your general electives then?
Well, essentially,
Because-
we are required to ensure that they are within a course. Of course, we could have them be separate, But in the case of digital literacy, right, for example, we have those standards throughout courses that students take. So it checks the box that yes, they've participated in exactly what the state is asking for. For the writing intensive courses, we have them embedded in a literacy composition. So we meet the needs of ISB within our current courses, and they do not have to be their own separate standalone course because they're in the course that they're already enrolled in.
So isn't there I can't remember what it's called, like where you have to do a budget for a household and stuff?
Yeah,
Where's
that?
that?
Consumer ed.
Consumer ed.
education.
And
Yeah.
so that is, in that situation, it is a 9-week unit. Could a school district say, I want a whole year of consumer ed, and they make this whole scope and sequence? Yes, of course. But there are just minimum, here's what we do for consumer ed.
But that's not a box we have to check?
And that's why I wanted to give you the ISB there with the courses that they say.
And see, and we, thank you.
They have to enroll in it, yes, for sure. They have to have this.
They have
Yeah.
to enroll in it?
But we don't have
But
an
it's
exact.
not listed here anywhere.
It's embedded in another course, Ms. Wozniak. Because for example, my economics or consumer ed was part of my government class. That's why it's not a class in and of itself. It's embedded in another course.
Right,
But some students do take the specific course, and then
Would be
it's
an
also an
elective.
elective in that sense.
But there's not a check mark
So
here
if your
for
point is,
consumer
Ms.
ed.
Wozniak, why there's not an explicit check, I just followed the ISB
Okay.
role, which is why I put that sheet in the folder.
But it's still going to be a requirement.
Went down right on that. Yeah.
Okay.
It still is. It's a part of what they take. Yep.
Jennifer, but that 9-week course, I think you said 9, is embedded in the history scope, right?
That's one. Yeah, it's in a few different locations
Okay, I
for
didn't know
students
that.
to take.
Okay.
There are opportunities in a few. Yeah.
Okay.
But you don't have to take any history courses.
Two.
The social
So
science.
you don't have to take any,
Social
so
science.
Look,
there's no social studies, so how do you get your Illinois Constitution?
they just.
It's
Social science.
It's social
But
science.
they just put that there.
Social
They
science.
just
Oh, down at the
made it.
bottom.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's I hate that because that's a discredit. Not a discredit, but a disservice to our students to remove social studies. And
Oh, no, it's down here. I'm sorry.
I
missed
see
it.
social
Shifting
science,
recommendation.
yeah.
Social
It's
science.
the-
It's just
it's the
different
same thing.
words.
It's the same thing.
They just changed the
Yeah.
words for whatever reason. Ms. Gillen? If we get a microphone for Ms. Gillen.
Hey, this is some great work, but I just had a little question. What is the difference that you guys are seeing between the required to pass versus participation? Because I'm thinking of this as a teacher. Is there a rubric for participation? I know that during COVID, gym was considered participation, and I asked people, what is participation? And they said, you were enrolled, and I said, what did you do to enroll? The counselors enrolled us. So the kids, during COVID, PE was really tough. But I'm just thinking about moving forward. If some of the kids were like I was in high school, participation in PE, I'll show up one day a week. How are we going to monitor that and really have some fidelity and strength in these classes?
Great question, Ms. Gillen. And the short answer is yes. Within the policy draft for the recommended, we do have explicitly what participation means, right? And it's not like a rubric, but it's like attendance of this, being there of this, and I just don't remember it offhand, so I wouldn't even want to say it, but I can definitely share it. And so the answer is yes. I just do not remember it offhand.
So can I just ask then, how did you just come to participation versus maybe a pass-fail grade?
Well, what the team discussed versus a pass-fail of really honoring, specifically for PE, really honoring the fact that this is a part of students' GPA, and discussions are really around that for a multitude of students, that getting an A and a GPA within PE, right, is wonderful, And so having it as a part of our GPA versus a pass-fail was really because of that. Ultimately, if a student were to fail the course, which we don't want, right, it would lower their GPA. However, it wouldn't create a barrier for their graduation and an additional course in their schedule the following year or the following semester as a credit recovery.
I think I had Mr. Shinkton next.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
So this is another thing that we had a little bit of a robust discussion on. So I'd like to talk about the other flip side of what these two individuals are trying to do at the high school. Because if the situation they might not have to be dealing with this if this situation already didn't occur, say, let's say in the middle schools. So, and for me, I've been looking at this for 11 to 12 years, even with the last administration. Okay. And to be totally honest, whatever the policy would come to for a promotion policy for the lower grades is definitely affecting what the high school is seeing. Now, in this PowerPoint, if we want to shift to preventative support instead of post-failure, we already have the post-failure in the middle schools. You know, as we see the data, a lot of the elementaries, for whatever reason, the elementaries are doing fine. Somewhere in between, it goes off hinge, but then it doesn't get corrected, so it becomes a problem because the high school requires you to get a credit. So now if you fail, there's a consequence. Now, I've been pushing in the district for 11, 12 years to have some kind of promotion policy, and we can't put our hands on something. There's going to be a cost and an expense, okay? If we hold kids back, there's going to be an additional cost that the district's going to have to spend. But not spending it only makes that problem worse. So what I'm trying to say is this is great work that they're trying to do. They're trying to correct an issue, but if we don't correct this other issue, it's always going to continue.
That's right.
And I had Ms. Gonzalez next, and I saw Mr. Vukovic and Ms. Lindsay. Mr. Vukovic, I'm sorry. So go ahead, Ms. Gonzalez.
Okay. I was writing some notes down, and thank you for sharing that, because I think what everyone has said previously is accurate. We are not preparing a lot of our students to be high school ready. We see that as the problem. But what we see, as the equity piece in this work, which it was brought to my attention that it needs to be more fleshed out and apparent, is that our students don't have enough time to catch up. So when the students say, hey, we need study halls, hey, I don't want to miss lunch or debate between having lunch and going to see maybe my counselor, who I get a lot out of. That's the equity piece. Our students, literally, some of them have to debate whether they are going to eat and relax, or whether they're going to go to the next thing that we know is going to help them out. So I want to just think about that. But I think the other piece of this, and exactly to what you're saying, Ms. Hannah, is that because they don't have the time, they can't get to the elective. They can't get to the vocational, whatever it is that they want to get to, because if you're failing math or you're failing gym, that takes up another period in their school day where it's like, okay, I have to take it. Like, I need to graduate, although I would love to take shop for another year, you know? And I think that, and I kind of appreciate Ms. Gillen's point in the sense of, like, you know, what do we see as the difference is that we don't want to hold students back for requirements that really don't align with the Illinois State Board of Education. I don't want to hold a student back from taking a cool class that might help them stay in school because they got to take another gym class that they just have to take because they didn't like gym the first time and now they still have to make it up, you know?
You know, yeah, and Ms. Gonzalez, I would be remiss to not to really lean on, and I look to Joanna too, because all of the work, the students that have come to our board meetings, right, and just really listening to them,
Yeah.
right, and so I didn't know if you wanted to add something to Joanna.
Yeah, I feel like I agree with what Adriana just said. Even today, I didn't really have time to eat because I was trying to catch up on AP Environmental. And I feel like if we were to build in that time into our schedules to have a study hall, and if it were to be approved even along the way, have these study halls be structured good to where you group a part of like students that are you've seen have struggled in, let's say, math before, you'll group those students into that study hall where they can get additional help throughout the day, and you're not taking time out of your day to do like catch-up work or even for mental health. Like me personally, I would not want to like go out of my lunch period to talk to a social worker because that's my period. I get to talk to my friends and actually socialize. So I'm thinking like if we were to have this, it's not really cutting out the average curriculum that the district holds us to. It's just changing it from being required to participate in. So from like a change from required to pass to required to participate in. And I think I do agree with Adriana, but it's also kind of like once you hear that 23 to 17 jump, it's like you get scared. But like Miss De La Sanchez said, like it's not really, it's just on paper, you know. So
Can I just add one more thing and then I'll end my comments? Because to Joanna's point, just because we expect the 17 credits to be for passing, that doesn't mean that we don't require our students to be full-time students. Because we need that. They have to take a gym class. They have to participate in gym in order for us to align and comply with the state expectations. The other thing I wanted to say, I just missed it. It was about the full-time enrollment. When I remember it, if I remember it, I'll swing back to it. But I thought it was important to continue the next.
It'll
person.
come back.
It'll come back. It'll come back. Full-time enrollment, though. It's a requirement. Yeah.
Mr. Vukovic.
Yeah, I've got two comments. Long-term, what Ms. Hannah was talking about, vocational education. Back in the 80s, the vocational center opened out by CLC. And that's when vocational education moved out of the old East Campus. I have no clue how they're teaching, what they're teaching, but when it was at that facility, we had kids that were involved. You go on Victory Street, Jackson Street, Elmwood, Wisconsin Avenue, and I could show you houses that kids in this district, they were involved in the carpentry, they were involved in the plumbing, They were involved in the
Interior design,
electricity.
all of it.
And they've gone on to be union whatever.
Yes.
We've had people I know that learned welding in that building and have gone on to have successful careers. Some of them own businesses.
Yes.
We've had
Automotive.
auto mechanics. We had in the business department,
Yes.
they used to have the old Greg shorthand.
Yes.
And there were many people, back then it was women, that went on to become, just down the street, they became legal secretaries.
Legal secretary,
And
everything.
many of them
Absolutely.
had very long careers, and they all started right there in that building.
That's
So,
right.
you know, there's something that maybe that needs to circle back, and because it worked. It worked. You know, you actually, that vocational, that was at East Campus.
Yes.
It was a smaller version of the tech campus, because
campus, yes.
when I was in school, we had kids that would bus in from Warren, North Chicago, and Zion to take vocational classes
here.
there.
Absolutely.
So, you know, it's something that we could look back to trying to mirror again, because there certainly is a need there.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's long-term. Short-term, you know, I heard the board president, I heard you talk about kids being ready. Well, this district, under this administration, you've gutted a reading program. You've tried to put Band-Aids on it. You know, we haven't gotten any reports about WHAM and BAM and WOW and Asian services, and now you've got the latest one that you just brought in here. You know, where are we with that stuff? Are these kids getting the services? Because if they can't read, they're
Right.
having problems by the time they get to high school.
Right.
It would make all that other stuff just a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Read.
Ms. Lindsay?
So I also have two comments, and it kind of ties to a lot of what everyone's talking about. In terms of the PE wellness, that is just the physical aspect. There's no mental health component to it. Is that correct?
It's just as far as what they would be learning, just to clarify, in their own scope and sequence for each of their PE courses. So each course has their own curriculum and their map that they follow.
So in those maps, is there a mental wellness aspect to it?
So suicide
and
prevention, which is a
to
1
even
week course.
speak in depth, I'd have to get back to that myself.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I would just like to advocate for, if we are taking away one of the social sciences as one of our requirements, we've had many students come to board meetings and voice their concerns that they're not getting support. And yes, some of them may be able to access one-on-one instruction, but it might be helpful for our kids to also learn as a class. Maybe it's a required to participate, so that they're prepared. They know what to do. They know how to identify a panic attack. They have skills for, if I'm having an anxious moment, what can I do to calm down? Conflict resolution skills. That would go a long way to help resolve a lot of the issues we're seeing in the schools.
Yeah, you got it. That's great. Thank you.
My second piece was tying back to the readiness for our students, and we're trying to be proactive with these pieces. Reading is a huge component, math is a huge component, and if we're taking out the reading specialists and they're not getting that intervention, the district needs to start looking at intensive remediation.
Yes.
I've personally worked with students where we turned their reading scores around in a matter of 6 to 12 weeks.
Absolutely.
We've done it. It was intensive, and when they got back in school, they were able to absorb all of the other content subjects. So if that's not something that's going to be done during the school year, a lot of the students I worked with were over the summer, where they spent their summers doing intensive, specific remediation to get them back on track. That would also help alleviate a lot of the problems we're seeing.
That's right.
I joke, but are you looking for a job?
I tried, and no one called me, so.
Too late.
Yeah, it's way.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes. I think I thank you for all the work that you've done on this, and I'm going to support what you're doing because I think it's to the best of our, for our students. But my concern is the fact that some of our students will not want to participate in PE, and this will give them an out. And if we don't clearly define for them what participation is, they will not show. And our teachers who teach PE are going to be upset because they won't have any guidelines. Do I mark this student down as participating? Yes, they've come 1 day a week, or not. Or do we have an alternative for that student? Can somebody talk to that student? Do we have another option for PE? This student doesn't want to dress for PE, but maybe they can do something else to make up participation. It could be running around the block, if that's what they want to do. If we have a PE instructor that wants to take these alternatives. So I'm just wondering if we build that in, they're going to miss also in freshman seminar. There's a lot of great information and they don't realize it. And some of our freshman seminar teachers are really dedicated and want to get that information to these kids. But if they now realize, I don't really have to go to that class anymore, if we don't clearly define in their mind what participation means.
That's not the message. I mean, students have to participate, right? It's not a message not to participate, right? We have to participate.
Yeah, but what does that mean?
It is a requirement.
You haven't clearly defined what that means.
You're absolutely right.
Who decides what participation is? It the teacher, the instructor will decide what participation is?
Yeah, and I think this is and I'm the only one to interrupt because I think we're talking past each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Is we're using the term participate, and what are you guys are saying is required to be enrolled. Is because if I am enrolled but I never show up, then I'm going to fail that course.
Right.
Right? Participate is am I misspeaking, or is it required to be enrolled?
It is to be enrolled. You have to be enrolled.
So you have to be enrolled.
So,
and we're saying you have to participate.
You have
but
to
again,
participate.
Participation means
That's
that
right.
if you don't participate, you fail the class.
Okay,
and I think it's an A, B, C, D, F. It's GPA weighted, and that was part of the conversation about the GPA weighted.
But then I want to know what happens to these students that are failing to meet our guideline for participation.
They are already
and now
failing.
They have to retake. Do they have
No.
to retake 2 PEs?
That's my point. That's why
Mr.
this.
I don't know what happens to them. Or
Currently, they have to retake PE.
Currently they do, but what will happen if we say no, they didn't participate?
So they would fail.
They will.
They would fail the
And then
course.
I'm curious, what do you anticipate? How will this new program affect our graduation rate? Will we get more kids through as graduates?
I can't give a prediction. Just to go back to your there's a lot of questions there.
Yeah.
So number one, I really want to speak to our awesome PE teachers. They offer wonderful choices for our students. So that's number one. They do offer choices. They hear all the feedback too in addition, and they're really working hard as a team. So that's number one. And there was a couple different questions. I know Adriana, you were gonna speak to that in the first half.
Do you want me to jump in now?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Sure.
So thank you, Mr. Riddle, because we
Yes.
had talked a lot about that, and we had thought about, why not do it pass fail. We also considered our student athletes because they also, if they're a junior and senior in varsity, they have that participation already, and then can waive gym as our JRDC members and band. So we thought about like everything to try to knock these out, and also have it be valuable for the students because that's the whole point of this. We want it to be enriching, but the example that I made in a board meeting previously, this was a while ago during one of our second or third readings, was that when I go to ROTC and I fail my class, I don't retake ROTC 2 periods during the day the next year.
Right.
What happens is that Colonel so-and-so is going to say, Adriana, absolutely not. You are not fit to be a captain. What can I say? You should have tried harder. But I see potential in you. Let's see what we could do this year. And that's the thinking that we have to approach gym with, is that you don't get punished twice, right? Because they are GPA drops, and then they have to take double the class, which doesn't make sense.
Right.
So that's the thing. We want to be intentional when we have students enrolling in our courses, because it's an added stress. And to the teacher's point, they have to have skin in the game. They have to care about, okay, if they're looking to apply to certain programs, be it vocational, be it college, that's gonna matter, right? People are gonna ask like, hey, you know, you did great in this arena, but why is your GPA so low, or you know, whatever. Not that GPAs are everything, but it factors into that. So I think if anything, it goes back to, you know, the discussion that we had about grading in general, is that to participate, the gym teachers have their rubric, and you know, dressing isn't everything, but I think it's about how we deliver that message to the students, is that you're enrolled, you have to be here, this is for your wellness. It factors into, you know, your mental health as well. But, you know, if you don't try, you have one shot every year to kind of get with the program, but you don't get punished twice for it, is what I'm saying. So
Does it affect your GPA or not?
it does, yeah.
Ms. Shington, Ms. Hannah, and then we can wrap this part up.
You had your hand up, Ms. Wozniak?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it, Ms. Wozniak. I'll come to you. No, I do want to hear it.
We need to talk about this, 'cause I'm talking about.
Go ahead, Mr. Shington.
Oh.
You're on. I think I heard you. It's just not loud, but we got you.
So, I'm not going to, I don't want to sit and debate back and forth. So, yes, our kids have to have some skin in the game, and I keep going back to the elementary promotion policy, because in the elementary schools, if you go up to just about any student, most of the students will tell you flat out to your face, I'm not going to do any of the work. They're not going to hold me back anyway. So, I mean, I can tell you that teachers and staff are like, well, you know, they're trying to motivate these kids. Well, you know, what about some aspiration, and if you want to go and do this? Listen, you know, all tech campuses are great and all. You want to have an automotive? If you can't read, you're not going to fix a car in today's day.
That's right.
Because you need to read
That's right.
manuals. Okay? So it isn't, these aren't the cars of yesterday where it was just change the plugs and the wires and put in a battery, and guess what? It runs.
Right.
So I keep coming back to, I've come back to this for the last, like I said, decade. If we don't correct
reading,
the you know, the lower grades, and get the kids, we're not going to get them all to grade level, okay? But if we're in the ballpark on some of these, then you've got a better fighting chance.
Pat, Ms. Wozniak, and then you, Ms. Hannah.
So
y'all had no. Go ahead, Ms. Wozniak.
Number 4. So you have to take 4 language arts courses. So, you know, I would think it's freshman English, it's sophomore English, but you flunk freshman English, you still have to take freshman English and pass that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's not. But it say you okay. So you do have to take freshman English.
Yeah.
And
They're the core courses. They are important.
yeah, but so you couldn't take a different English course to qualify for the 4 English courses. You do have to.
We do have courses at other grades that you can take, right? Those are the bulk, right? Our literacy composition, right?
Mhm.
Those are exactly what the kiddos are taking.
So you could say you hated freshman English, You don't have to take, you could take,
Freshman English is freshman English.
you have to take that. Okay, okay.
And I guess, and that's when you talk about hundreds of course offerings, right? This
Right.
was why someone like me with the CSP model is I took speech. Well, guess what? Speech gave me even though it was a half semester course, it gave me a full credit in English. So my senior English class was an elective because by the time I finished my junior year, I had taken 4 years of English. So there are opportunities, and that's kind of where I would say with Mr. Vukovic, and not to get sidetracked, but I would say, and even Mr. Shinkton's point, is a lot of these classes, I think when we talk about advocacy, is we should be making the point that this is a math class, right? It's because if you are doing automotive or science or whatever, is that those electives or vocational training courses do meet the core content area, and I think that's a more a lot of a bigger, deeper conversation. But that is what I would be saying, is because you do want the students to be attached, and if I can engage you and teach you math, but I'm teaching it to you through engineering or about electrons, and that's your science credit, right? Those are some of the times where your elective can also satisfy one of those minimum course requirements. But we got to go get back to what Ms. Adriana is saying, is that Ms. Gonzalez, is that they are passing that freshman year. That's why, as a board, one of the concerns, again, we talk about coming from 8th grade. Ms. Shinkton, you're not ignored. Your work was not in vain. We implemented that policy. We had that policy. COVID hit. We shelved that policy. So I think the board has to have a real conversation, and it was that. Is the goal is not to retain students. The goal is that we need an extended day and an extended year, and to offer those intensive supports, and to do that at different grade levels. So second, fifth, 8th, and then each of the high school years. So that policy about that, yes, the stick that we're giving the teachers is that if your students aren't meeting, parents are notified, interventions are placed, but if the students are still not where they need to be, that they're required to go to summer school. I think as a board, we do, and there's going to be a financial impact. I know Deputy Cesario looks at that every year, and one of the considerations why we held it, but I'm with you, is because, in what I heard Ms. Linsing say, is we have to be providing those intensive supports. There's not enough time in the year and in the day. And even when we talk about reading specialists, it definitely helped. But when a majority of your students need those intensive supports, I think that was the determination, is that having a small group may work for that small group of students that those teachers who were excellent at what they were doing, but you were still seeing high numbers of your students not being grade level proficient in reading. So it wasn't that I would say it's not that Brandon, I can speak for me, doesn't value the work that the reading specialist did. It was that the lift was much bigger. It's because if 80 to 90% of your students need reading intervention supports, then either we need to provide small group interventions and spend that money and resource and increase that by a very astronomical number, or we need to improve core instruction and provide the intensive supports before, after, and summer school in order to get larger percentages of our students. And so that has not been implemented, Mr. Shinkton. That was a success, one that I tell you, when I got on this board, was not a proponent and a fan of holding students back. I didn't think that it would get a higher academic achievement, but I heard from our task staff and our teachers that this is the problem they were running into at the high school. And so I just want to affirm what it is that you're saying, is this presentation is about solving an emergency now, but everybody, I think, has said to the point, is this is happening before, and it's been happening, and we have to create some levels of accountability, because if I grow up believing that grades don't matter, right, that wasn't how you raised your son. I know grades, GPA, where you're going, what you want to do matters. Not everybody has that same understanding, and so what we have to do is provide those opportunities. So I will say is that the board has the policy, and as we talk about this, I like looking at the 22 credits, because my point is, even with some of those other electives, our students should be able, especially if fully enrolled, is that if they fail gym, I'm not making them retake gym. They should still be able to make up that credit through an elective class or through something else without having to repeat gym. So I understand 100% why the recommendation is 17. This is speaking for Brandon, not the board. I know we've said, like Mr. Riddle, Ms. Gonzalez would support the 17. What I'm saying is, unless you can help me, is even if we make the credits 22, that, and we're not forcing them to retake the gym, right? So we still make that a, you're required to be enrolled every year.
Right.
Is that they should still be able to reach the 22 credits. It's because we say enrolled in 22, but if a student is in school from first through ninth period, I mean, I forget, wasn't it like 26 credits that they would have earned if they passed every class?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, up to 20 or
26.
28, and then possibly 32 if they took their zero
Zero
hour.
hour.
right,
Per
their
hour.
very
And that's
first
my,
grade.
that's kind of my, is that I think between being fully enrolled in school is that if we eliminate the required to graduate part from the, retired to the gym requirement to graduate, is
Sure.
that we still have enough time in those schedules to make up those 5 credits. Do you all see that
because that's
differently?
exactly why the idea of the study hall being in and the opportunity of the study hall that isn't any credit, right?
Okay.
So those would be essentially, if a student has this, 4 years of study hall, right, to have that piece in there. So that's one piece to that, right?
Okay.
And it really speaks to the heart, and this is just Jennifer speaking right to you. It speaks to the heart of, and I take this seriously within the role of the rhetorical question, and the real question is, what are you doing to help our students? And so,
I just really got to say this.
Ms. Hannah and then Mr. Shington, I would say, is there something to add? Okay, go ahead, Ms. Hannah. Mr. Shington will have the
Okay.
final word.
Okay, I just need to ask a question of you all. Okay? And I know we're doing traditional education. Okay? Where we have how many classes per day are we giving our students? How many classes per day does our students attend in a day?
So the average student starts their day, most students start their day second period and they go through ninth.
So
with the lunch in between.
and so second through ninth are different class subjects, right?
Correct. Yes.
Have we ever thought about restructuring the day and what we are teaching in a day? Example, on Monday and Wednesday and Friday, the kids are going to take math, language arts, and science. On Tuesday, and through the days, okay, through Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they got those classes only. And then they have time to do those electives. And then on Tuesday and Wednesday, you come back again with your social science classes, your social studies, your history, what have you. I'm just giving an example. And the reason I'm saying that is because I've been researching how other countries teach their children, and they don't bombard their children with everything in one day. Brain capacity, people. okay? It's hard for us to, when we go to college, to take 3 classes in a day. But we want our students, and this has always been, we want our students to go to 7 different classes in one day, 5 days a week. Well, yeah, they're going to be burnt out, okay? And so I'm wondering if we can really, really, really get creative and really, really start looking at what really is best for students. And we're talking about, the social, emotional, and all the stress that they're under, all of that. Have we even thought about doing something like that?
Actually,
Just a thought off the top of my head.
So actually, yes, we have, and that's why I asked to come and speak to that right now. Is we've actually thought about it, and we've actually looked at it at middle school, and we're actually working with a group of middle school teachers to look at the scheduling, much to what you're just saying, in terms of kind of blocking them out to provide more time and to provide more choice. So it also does come with some shifts in terms of how we view school, right? And the teachers are the practitioners, so we have to work with our teachers. And I think, again, just going back to the beginning of the presentation, this is something that is immediate, right? It's about the short term, because what you're speaking of is you're absolutely right. I mean, there is research that shows we have other examples, not only around the globe, but also here in our country, of how it works. If you look at even Stevenson High School right here, it's not that far, and how they structure things. But it doesn't happen overnight either, and it takes some planning and preparation. So I don't want to take away from what you said, because I do think it's valid and I do think it's a good idea, and we are seeing some of that right now, because what you're saying, it does make sense. There's things that have to change, right? And we're going to talk more about that when we get into the middle school piece and some of what we've done this year. But just going back to this particular presentation and the discussion about the policy, I think that's the whole point too right now, is that this is immediate. And not to say that isn't something we should look at, but I think that this is something that we need to do in order to start taking that steps. Because you can't go from doing it really what is an archaic factory model, like you're saying, that they go from one to the next, the bell rings, right? And that's really, it's an archaic model. But we also have to understand that this is the way our teachers were taught to teach when they were preparing to become teachers. And it's a system shift, not just in the school, but in the district too. So those are things that we're going to have to look at moving forward. And I do think it allows for what you said. It allows for innovation, it allows for creativity, and it allows, most importantly, to give our students choice. And that's what we want to do. So I wanted to interject. I thought it was an important piece here to say that is something that we're looking at. It is something we're having conversations about. But it is, I think, right, to bring it back, that this is more of an immediate concern right now.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Shinkton, final comment? Oh. And does it add to? Yes?
So, let me say, a study hall is like a pair of pliers. It's a tool in the toolbox. Although, if you don't know how to use it, it's worthless. Okay? So, let's think, if we put it in there, we have to teach the students how to use that resource.
No, that's an excellent point. Yes. And the other point to make too is that we're always looking at it, and just because it's in there now doesn't mean it needs to be in there 4 years from now. And hopefully it doesn't, right? So thank you.
Ms. Leguizamo, final comment.
Thank you for that, Board President. So I'll just kind of repeat what is said on social media. where people have expressed that historically study hall didn't work. It was used as a class to skip, right? So I kind of wanted to put that out there because it was posted. And that's an important piece of a lot of this, is that our students have to learn how to utilize these tools that we're giving them, right? But I also just wanted to emphasize that I think, especially in classes and negotiation piece of it, a lot of that talks about what's in it for me, the WIFM factor. I think some of you kind of heard me talk about this before, right? But the students are sometimes asking, why am I learning what I'm learning in this coursework, right? And I think what it is, we tend to forget sometimes to even have those conversations, not just curriculum, right? And which is great, thank you, right? But also having those conversations with, what do you think, the type of jobs that you can do with what it is that you're learning today, right? And having those career-minded conversations, I think is really going to help elevate some of the interest in why they should want to learn what they're learning, right? And it's that negotiation factor. Because I remember even being back in middle school, a lot of my peers would just be like, in math class, why do I need to learn about order of operations? Lo and behold, I'm using order of operations today at my job, right? So, it's just stuff like that I just wanted to bring out. And once again, we talk about some of these things that are everyday usage that we're talking about, like career things, but there's some things that is already in our school systems that we just got to add in that extra element, right? So I know in other schools, PE is also a lifeguard course. Our community in Waukegan is looking, and Gurnee and nearby school districts is looking for lifeguards. They can't find lifeguards. It's just as simple, but we got the pools. We have the tools, and so and by creating a lifeguard program in our PE course would be amazing. And they can get a job during the summer and so on and so forth doing some of that stuff. And even in our driver's ed courses, right? Let's add in just minor mechanical things. How to check the oil, how to know where your gas tank is, like, and just those minor, everyday things that you think that it would be learned or whatever, knowing that you need to go for your oil change every 3,000 miles, just rotating the tire. Just those small tidbits of things, right? And it's already kind of there. We just gotta oomph it a little bit, right? So I just kind of want to add that. And those are all my comments. Thank you, Board President.
Thank you. Appreciate the robust discussion. I guess if you come back with next steps, Superintendent, or where we're going. Next up, we have the information items.
Yes. Thank you, and thanks for the robust conversation in the community. Thank you.
These have been submitted for information. I'm going to go through each one at a time like we did in the previous meeting. The information is there. Items attached. 5A, approval of for Embrace IEP and 504 subscription. That's a renewal. B, request for attendance at the Learning Disabilities of America Conference in Las Vegas. Items have been presented. C, request for attendance at the Innovative Schools Summit teaching SEL competencies addressing learning loss. D, request for attendance at the National Association School Psychologists Conferences in Denver. E, approval of Pacific Educational Group PEG Courageous Conversation Racial Equity Systemic Transformation Contract.
Comments or question?
Go ahead. Whichever one you have.
Yep. So in this one, as I was looking at the coursework that is going to be offered in the equity based, I noticed that there was a lot of focus on racial equity. I was wondering if this is one series of X series, or is, because I'm looking for us to also continue the conversation in equity in various other
More
places,
broader.
right?
Mhm.
And so I'm also looking for our LGBTQ communities. I'm looking for our students with disabilities, right? So I think, and there's a lot of focus, and I think we have had several courses already that our teachers have taken that talks about internal biases and so on and so forth in regards to like racial inequities. So I noticed that this curriculum, once again, is predominantly focused on race. And so I just kind of wanted to make sure that are we still, I mean, race is always going to be a conversation and a need, right? But I'm looking to go beyond race. There's a lot of other inequities and disproportionalities that are occurring, and so I'm just trying to understand: is this one of X, or is this?
You're speaking specifically at item E, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so then the next one too also is another partnership. So it is one. It is one set of professional development and coaching opportunities. I can come back and after I speak with Tasia to see, what's the full spectrum of what's being offered. But the subsequent one, pardon me, the next one, F, also speaks to that, and that an aspect of that also is around professional development and coaching to be inclusive. So I can follow up with Ms. Fields and get back to you on that question in terms of if it's only focused on one aspect of equity and inclusivity, and how those other topics that you mentioned are also addressed.
Okay. Thank you for that additional information. Appreciate it.
Ms. Gonzalez.
Yeah, just very briefly, if it was anything like I participated in one of those conversations, Ms. Fields had invited us as a board to participate. If it's anything like that series or that segment, I think they focus on race because it's a lens through which they can view all these other inequities, but that's the sole focus. But I think to your point, equity isn't just racial. It's also about status. It's also about all these
Right.
other things. So,
But this particular group does focus on that's their focus. That's why I referenced F is it's not the only resource. It's one of the resources.
Exactly.
But point taken that yes, it's not just about racial inequity. Equity is about a broad variety of topics like you mentioned. Yes.
Ms. Gillen.
Where everybody was racing to be first in line. And we're all going to get there, but sometimes if we stop pushing each other, we can all get there, and we can all do it together.
Right.
And I'm reminded that I have 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth. I need to shut up and listen more. And we all need to, and we need to stop. We need to try and come together. We're all mad. We're all scared. We're all sad. We're not doing what we need to do for our kids. But we've got to come together because we don't have the time and the energy to keep fighting each other. We need to start looking at each other and listening to each other. And I've been spending a lot of time sitting back and going, what can I do? Not who can I blame, who can I scream at, who can I be mad at. But guys, I'm having a hard time with change. I'm old. But the bottom line is what we're doing is not working. Because I'm not in the classroom anymore as a 15-year-old. And what worked with me isn't working with our kids. We've got to start thinking. But before we can think about how to change, we have to start opening our ears and opening our hearts and seeing what we can do and coming together. And I don't know if you need to look up to the sky or look down or sit down and shut up, but we all need to start listening to each other. And we need to realize we're going to have to change. And we're going to have to change things and do things differently because We're not meeting the needs of these babies, and they're changing and they're drifting. It's about time. We've really got to do some crazy stuff, because we don't know where the kids are at, and we got to meet them.
Ms. Gillian, just to add and ask you, would you say that these courageous conversations are part of the change that you think is needed? And that's up to you if you want to answer that question. You don't have to answer if you don't. But the courageous conversations that people are talking about is it does dive into like racial conversations, sexuality, like LGBTQ, and just so many different aspects.
Go ahead, Mr.
I want to chime in on that, Lucy, just briefly. See, I think truly, I think that education has become everything except education. We're supposed to be educating children to read, and I'm just going to really go simple: read, write, and do math. But we're so focused on what society says, being politically correct, doing this, and this. A courageous conversation. We had courageous conversations in 1983. You understand? We are complicating education more than education really should be. If we stop focusing on everything else except educating the children to read, to write, to do math, no science, we would be doing something.
So you're saying that as people that are in front of these students that are educating don't need to understand their own internal biases in order for them to do the work?
That's up to them. You understand yours, don't you?
There's some people that don't, right? And that's where the conversation.
And with the teachers, you understand? Mm-hmm. Teachers went to school to learn how to teach. They didn't go to school to have somebody examine what kind of childhood issues they had. Okay, and this is a more philosophical conversation that we could have. But my whole point is that education has become more complicated, not only for educators, but definitely for children, because they're not getting what they're supposed to be getting from education. Because we got to talk about, we got to do, equity. We had equity when we were educating kids years ago.
So, some of the conversations that are scheduled, right, is talking about isolate
And I
race.
see the two hands. I'm
right?
sorry.
Color and culture consciousness, bridging cultures, systematic influences, a plan of action type of thing. So those are the conversations. I don't know if you saw the curriculum there, but that's going to be the conversations that they're going to have.
We just need to change our attitude. And our attitude is, I want to get out of here first, and I'm going to push everybody out of the way. And you know what? If there's a fire in this room, I don't want to be the one that gets trampled. Mm-hmm. We need to all do it calmly and together, and we all need to move in the same direction.
Yep.
And it's about time that we all need to just stop and say, what direction are we going in? That's right. And we've got to also decide, because that same path is not working.
Right.
And as a teacher, I need to know that if I take my kids out that door, and there's a fire out there, I better be able to think fast. I'm going to do this, and I hate to tell you, I'm going to break these windows. And it's about time that we stop thinking we're going to use that door, and we better start breaking down some windows, because the kids are going to be building our houses pretty soon, and we're not going to be giving them the math skills. We've got to do something different. So, you know what? Stop thinking about what we did and think about what we're going to do.
Thank you. Ms. Lindsay?
Ms. Hannah, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. So I went to U of I for education. I student taught in a school both in Champaign and Urbana. And the students in my class were very diverse. I asked for the most challenging students I could have because that's what I needed to be prepared for, because I planned to teach here in Waukegan. I wanted to get back to my community. As a student teacher, you're right, they did not prepare me for diversity and equity and inclusion. It was not a hot topic in education that many years ago. Right. In my student teaching class, I had students that were expressing or having discussions around colorism. And this student was too black. This student wasn't black enough. This kid is mixed and he has freckles. He's not a part of our community. We had Asian students who were Korean and were being mislabeled as Chinese, and the kids were saying very inappropriate things for children. Our students could not focus. They were not listening to me teaching them math. They were not listening to me teaching them reading. We had to take a time out and build community in that classroom and understand that it doesn't matter what color you are, it's the matter of your character. We want to celebrate how you are different, and we want to acknowledge that you are different and embrace your culture and work together as a team so we can all understand this reading passage and apply it. So while I understand that there's some frustration of we need to focus on reading, math, science, that is a huge component, but we also have to teach these kids how to build community, how to live alongside students with these differences, and that's going to take classroom time. If it was just on the parents, I'm obviously white. I can't teach my kids all of the cultural things from other cultures that are in this community. And it's more than just black, white, Hispanic. We have many Asian, we have a lot of Indian people. So this information, the teachers have to get that information somewhere, and maybe it is part of the curriculum now in colleges of ed, but it wasn't part of mine.
Right.
And I'm not the oldest in the room, so these teachers need access to be able to talk to the wide spectrum of students we have. There is some bias that our teachers still hold against students. We have teachers for second graders identifying like, don't worry about college, you can go to the military. That is asinine to me. Sorry for the language, but that is wildly inappropriate. So there's a lot of work to be done, whether it's racial, whether it's orientation or identity, but it's unfortunate that it has to be a part of the classroom, but that's where we're at.
I get it.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Miss Lindsay. I know, but it is that important, and because we are the new norm. So I won't get into that philosophical question, but in the next decade, superintendent, over half of all public education students will be students of color. And so we have to create culturally competent classrooms, as Ms. Lindsay was discussing, and understanding that those things do play a factor in education. As much as we want to say just focus on reading, math, and I get it, we got to do those things well. But I agree is that it's the how. Students have changed, family structures have changed, and those are having implications in the classroom. So understanding those, dealing with those will help us see those better outcomes. So it is now 9:05. We are almost done. Ms. Leguizamo, I didn't want to, you are done?
Yep, thank you.
Okay. We are then, we had F, which was there, and I think we talked about that.
Can I just mention something
Yes.
on F? Okay. E and F are very important, and, and I agree with what we're doing and with what Ms. Fields is doing. I just would question whether she's been working with this equity and educational partners last year, and she's been working with them again this year, and they are a very expensive group. I was just looking over their contract, and my goodness, they're like $500 to $1,800 an hour for virtual consultation. So they're extremely expensive. I would just want to make sure that somebody's checked with her and she really believes that this group is helping her plan for success in our equity and what we're trying to do with equity and diversion here. Because they're an expensive group, and it seems to me a little strange that they're charging so much for virtual and not even coming in to actually see her for that kind of money.
So I can't speak to what they're charging. I mean, I imagine that it'd be more expensive if they came in, because then you have flight, hotel, and all that,
Yes.
right? And plus, you have to also pay for the travel time, right?
Yes, you would.
But I think the question that you asked about how are we evaluating these programs. So these are, whenever anything's proposed, we're constantly looking at things.
Okay.
And so it comes to the ASAP team. We meet weekly. We go over these items. We talk about the usefulness. First, it's a discussion between herself and her immediate supervisor, who's Jason, Dr. Nault.
Right.
And then we look at those things. And I think it's important that, just like we were talking about with this policy, the graduation policy, we have to look at it over time. We can't just keep paying and we're not looking at what the return is. I think any programs like this, it's really difficult to determine exactly what the return is. I think we can look at usage, right? It's similar to how we use AHS, BAM, or WOW. It's relative to who's on the receiving end, right? Mm-hmm. But we can look at the usage piece. How many kids are being seen? How many hours? Those pieces. And I think with this, it is about what we're taking away from it. So I think it's a great question. Those are things that we're looking at. I can have this. I mean, it's worth. I think there's one follow-up already. I will talk to her about providing some kind of narrative, possibly a quick, just this is what we're doing. This is how well it's going. Here's what we're thinking about moving in the future, and I think that might be helpful in terms of covering both some of the questions that Ms. Leguizamo had and then what you're posing right now.
Thank you.
It's a very reasonable question. It's just that's the process currently.
Right. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
G, Ovid Network Monitoring Tool. H, attendance at Assistive Technology Industry Association.
I was going to ask about that one. And the assistive technology, that's in our DL department, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
And so I was hoping that I would see Mr. Bublett's name there, because it is for the DL department, and it's not there for him to attend.
So he doesn't attend all of these, but these are the folks who actually work in that area with assistive technology. So he is the director of diverse learners, but as with the other conferences, he doesn't attend everyone, and those folks who are specialized in that area, because assistive technology is a very specialized area. He could probably speak better to it, but I'm just saying that it is very specialized. So it isn't unusual that he wouldn't attend that one with those team members. Okay. Similarly to the psychologist one, it's focused on their specific area of expertise. He does go to the larger ones, and I think there is another one on here coming up that he is going to be attending.
Yeah, we gotta. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Item I. And I think also we got to realize that sometimes the conferences don't align with personal decisions, and not everybody can go to every conference. So I won't say that's the case, all right? But
Yeah,
I do. It's like
this one
there are
right
conferences that even at school board, this would be great, but I got work commitments, kid commitments, and I'm not able to go out of town for an extended period of time.
And we've made a team commitment not to attend more than 2 or 3 a year, and if there is an issue, we discuss it, just because we want to make sure that we're spreading the wealth, so to speak, and that we are focused on the individual areas within the department. So I think that's a really good point to bring up.
Thank you.
Sure.
I attended at the LRP Legal Institute.
Quick comment.
Go ahead.
This is one of the conferences that I attended last April, and I do recommend it for any board member that really wants to dive in a little bit deeper into the world of diverse learners and the issues that we're seeing nationwide and within our district. I think this was a very big eye-opening, and I know I came back with a few policy and contract negotiation recommendations based off of this conference. So I just wanted to make that comment for the board members, any of them that are interested in it. It is very intense. And it's very, they do get into the itty-gritty work as to what is being done at like the individual level, so at IEP levels, and then it goes up higher. So just wanted to make that comment. Thank you, Board President.
Thank you. Item J, Smart Sheets, project management tool. It's a renewal. And then K is the IB conference for middle schools. Middle years, I'm sorry.
Wish there was more than two going though, but okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we're starting with one right now, and So we're starting with one. It's starting out small.
So this is
it's very intensive.
What's that?
You went to that one, Mr. Riddle, I believe, right?
I didn't go to that. No, but this is a good program, and this is starting at Smith Middle School, so that's great.
That they're in the application process.
We're in that application process.
So, but this is a really important aspect of that, so that they can learn more about not only what International Baccalaureate is, but how it relates to middle years program, what the students are receiving from the primary years program, and then how to prepare students to go to the high school program.
To move up, and then eventually they get their a degree or a high
That's
school
right,
diploma
the certificate,
with an international baccalaureate certification, which is cool.
That's the end result. That's what we're trying to. That's our end goal, rather. So,
Awesome.
Thank you.
Sounds great.
Well, with that, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Wozniak, second by Mr. Riddle. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you all.